Greetings, everybody, and welcome to an all-new edition of Let's Talk EdTech, this time with Dr. Donna Marie Cozine, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Consult DMC and Renaissance Academic Charter School of the Arts. Dr. Donna works around helping schools and districts create sustainable leadership that in turn help with meeting the needs of students, staff, schools, and stakeholders. So hi, my name is Amandeep. I'm leading academics here at TutorEye. We are 24/7 e-learning platform helping students achieve their academic goals through expert online tutoring and written help services. Dr. Donna, welcome to Let's Talk EdTech. How are you today?
Thank you, Amandeep. I'm very well, and I'm happy to be here with you.
Wonderful. So right off the bat, Dr. Donna, we would really want to know your views on education in general post-pandemic.
I don't know that we're post-pandemic yet. In the US, we're still in the pandemic and dealing with a new variant that's sweeping through the nation. I think the pandemic has caused many issues for education, not just delivery of instruction, but the fact that our schools are the foundation for many children for their social emotional learning and for just social interaction. I think the pandemic has taught us some things, some technology that we have used that we should continue to use. Particularly in the elementary school, we should continue to use any technology that fosters understanding and comprehension of the foundational skills of reading and math.
Very true, very true. So great, thank you so much for that. Dr. Donna, can you also tell us more about Consult DMC and Renaissance Academy Charter School?
Yeah, so let me start with Renaissance Academy Charter School of the Arts. I am no longer the CEO there. I have retired to launch Consult DMC full-time. But Renaissance Academy Charter School of the Arts was founded by me in 2013. I had a vision to start an elementary school of the arts here in Rochester, New York, that would embrace the arts as a vehicle through which children can learn all subjects and to grow their competencies around specifically math and reading and language arts. At the time that the idea was a mustard seed, the idea for the school was a mustard seed, a lot of schools in the US were taking arts out of the curriculum or out of the day because we had this new Common Core curriculum that was being introduced. And I felt there has to be another way. There has to be a school where children can walk in and just feel joyful. The impetus of this project was my own children. They were 3 and 10 months old at the time, and I really created a school that I felt they deserved. And in the process, created a school that over 506 students attend every year, and it serves 93 staff members. So it really was built on the foundation of joy. I decided to leave as my daughter was moving to middle school. My priorities as a mom changed. So now I am working with schools and districts on creating these sustainable leadership pipelines. In order to serve schools the best, I did write 2 different books. Whoop, this one's upside down. This one is So You Want to Be a Superintendent, Become the Leader You Were Meant to Be. And this one is Happy Teachers, Joyful Students, Engaged Families. And this one actually I wrote during the pandemic, the first year of the pandemic, because I felt that we really needed to remember what we do in schools that are joyful and continue to do that even during virtual and remote instruction.
Wonderful, Doctor. So you also speak about helping teachers and learners who are stressed and creating a system to sort of create and maintain sustainable and scalable educational leadership pipelines. Can you help us understand what exactly do you propose there?
It's actually quite simple. I truly believe that the number one job of any leader is to develop more leaders in their organization, because there will be a time when you as a leader step out and you need to have people who step in. And my experience has been investing in the people within your organization and helping them rise through the levels in your organization is the best way to develop that pipeline. Because you already have people who are mission aligned, they understand what you're trying to accomplish in your school, they have a proven track record, And quite frankly, you know what you need to work with on them in order to get them to the next level. Oftentimes, people will bring in other people that look great on paper, and this has been my experience. They look great on paper. They interview fabulously, and they walk in, and the wheels fall off because they just don't understand how we do things. So at Renaissance Academy Charter School of the Arts, I had a team of 13 leadership team members, and 11 of them had risen through the ranks. One started as an assistant teacher and now is one of our math instructional coaches. So I really truly believe to support leadership from within, to find people in your organization who have an interest in leadership, and then grow that right in your own organization. Be very grassroots about it.
Dr. Donna, I'm just really very curious, since you showed that book on superintendents. Just a quick question. So what we understand about US education system along with superintendents are, the superintendents is the sole decision maker of what is going to happen in the schools in their districts. Is that accurate?
I would say that's not 100% accurate. So the superintendent is the ultimate decision maker, but he or she reports to what's called a board of education in the US. And those people are voted by the constituents. So the superintendent has a board, but he also or she also has people beneath him or her who make recommendations. So one of the things I speak about in that book is my method for leadership development is called the driver's method. And V stands for validating relationships. And the idea that as a leader, we need to surround ourselves by people who are better than we are at certain things. You know, one of the first things I see new leaders are concerned about, I know I was concerned about it when I was a brand new assistant principal at 27. I thought, oh, what if I don't know the answer? And my mother, who was sage and wise and had been a principal and was an assistant superintendent, she said, you just find the answer or you ask people to do that. So the idea of superintendents being the final decision maker is true. However, they get lots of lots of input from people around them. But truly, the buck does stop with the superintendent of schools in the US. Excuse me.
Okay, sure. So, Dr. Donna, there's a very powerful statement that talks about 45% of new teachers sooner or later leave their profession. What do you think is the reason for that, and what are the best possible methods to sort of remediate it?
Well, thank you for asking that. And what's interesting about that statistic, that was pre-pandemic. So I have a feeling that number is going to be even higher. It was 45% of new teachers leave in their first 3 years. And I think, quite frankly, it's a lack of support and guidance. One of the misnomers in education, I think, and I don't know that we do it intentionally, but I think it's just the way that things have been, is you get a teacher out of school and you think they're ready to go. They go in their classroom and they do their thing, and they don't always get support. And the same thing with leaders. Oh, she's a principal now, she doesn't need help. And that's just not true. I think what would help is a more solidified mentoring program in every school where a new teacher is partnered with a more experienced teacher, but the right teacher, a teacher who's positive, a teacher who has empathy, a teacher who might teach something similar. There has to be likenesses between them so that they would really connect. I think that would make a big difference. And also things that we've done in my organization, starting when I was actually a teacher, is we had a new teacher monthly meeting where they would come together and they would say, what's going on this month? What questions do you have? At Renaissance Academy, our assistant principal did that. And she would have those monthly meetings and she'd say, okay, parent-teacher conferences are coming up. What do you want to focus on? How do you want to have conversations with parents? The number one answer, I think, why people leave any job is lack of support, and they don't feel appreciated and they don't feel like they're doing their best work. And those things can be mitigated by having an organizational wide, some sort of mentoring or support or coaching program. And I believe the exact same thing for leaders. I think leaders need coaches. When I had my leadership team, although I do this for other schools and districts, at the time I brought somebody in to work with our team. So he could be the leadership coach of all of the leaders. And then myself as a CEO, I had my own executive coach who was not the same coach, but who really understood what, as the CEO or superintendent of a charter school, I was going through. Because Amandeep, leadership is lonely. You can't share things with your constituents that you are dealing with. So when I was a superintendent, if the board dropped a bomb on me that I knew was going to have significant impact on my staff, I needed somebody to talk with and say, let's process through this. And that's what the coach did for me. And that's what I do for others whom I coach.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So Dr. Donna, how frequent do you have these leadership meetings with superintendents? Is it monthly? Is it once a year kind of a thing? And how large is that group?
So the way that I do my coaching is different. And it depends. It's not always superintendents. Sometimes it's teachers who want to be principals. I do it in a cohort. One way that I do it is a cohort fashion, where I work with a cohort of different leaders from different organizations. And the value in that is that we're focusing on those drivers that I mentioned. So when we're focusing on, let's say, discovering our mission, everyone is talking about what their mission is and how that relates to the school in which they live. And I found having that diverse group of people really creates robust conversations and even cross support from people within the organization. I worked with 2 women last year who both were trying to become superintendents as part of this group. One was from Ohio, one was from North Carolina, and they developed a nice relationship with each other, and they were able to support each other offline. The other thing I do is I work with organizations. So I'll work with the superintendent, and I'll be that superintendent's quote coach. And it depends on the organization. We might meet every other week or weekly. But then I also work with their team, and I serve as a coach for their team and develop the efficacy of leadership of those team members, following both the driver's method and in some cases, my school joy method, which is how to really have a school that people love to enter and in which they want to stay.
Mm-hmm. I'm really very excited. We don't see a lot of people talk about efficacy when you talk about leadership and accountability. So wonderful work there, Dr. Donna.
Thank you.
I would again go back to another statistic, which is 45% of superintendents don't last more than 3 years. What do you think is the reason for this?
The superintendency is a very, very high stress environment. And it also in public education and school districts, they get a contract for a certain amount of time, and usually it's 3 years.
Okay.
Michael Fullen's work, for anyone in education who's watching this, they know Michael Fullen. And his work says from thought to self-actualization takes 5 to 7 years. So if a superintendent comes in and starts a new initiative, in 3 years, it may not be showing the results that he or she wanted. And sometimes boards will just say, you know what, you didn't get the results, it's time to move on. Or the superintendent will say it's time to move on. But I have a more staggering statistic for you, Amandeep. And that is, in the school districts in the US that have the highest rate of poverty, children who need the most support, and where we need teachers who are the most skilled, 71% of superintendents don't last more than 3 years.
Wow.
We're talking about the children whose need the most support have this revolving door of leadership. And where I live in Rochester, New York, the city of Rochester is a very large public school district, and they have this revolving door of superintendents. And the problem is, as a new superintendent comes in, unfortunately, in our industry, they look and they say, out with the old, in with the new. And the teachers and the principals say, well, this too shall pass, because they're tenured and they're there and they've been there 15 years. And they say, we know what this looks like. We'll just keep doing what we're doing. And real change doesn't happen. So I'm thinking about ways to change that narrative. But there are districts where superintendents have been there for 10, 11, 12 years, which may not be a good thing either. You know, sometimes you need new ideas, you need new blood, but 3 years is just not enough time to see the changes that a superintendent might be implementing. Now, here's my caveat. If that superintendent does not have the skills or the competencies to be in the job, then they shouldn't be there. I'm not saying leave somebody there who is terrible or is ineffective, but if the person is making inroads, it does take time for our initiatives to take hold. And then of course, there's something called the implementation dip. When we start something new, results go down a little bit, but then they shoot up. So it's about patience. It's about monitoring what's happening. It's about accountability. Accountability tied to results. So if we think this is going to happen in 3 years, backward map, what should be happening in 6 months? What should happen in 12 months, 18 months, and make sure that your superintendent is hitting those targets. But the superintendency, as I said, is a very lonely job, and it really makes sense for superintendents to have some sort of coach, mentor, mastermind that they're a member of, because no one knows what they're experiencing except other people who are in those positions.
Right. So my takeaway is backward map, and what should your goals look like 6 months down the line, and maybe work your way up from there, your way backwards from there. Wonderfully put it. Dr. Donna, what are your views around tutoring?
Tutoring is great. I have a tutor for my own child. My son went from a school where they didn't do manuscript, cursive.
Okay.
I'm sorry, they didn't do cursive, and now he's in a school that does cursive. So I have a tutor coming over to help him with cursive. I'm from a family of educators, and I watched my mother be my brother's tutor, and it was not great. So I really do believe in tutoring. I believe that it's important if children have areas of need, that there are people who can support them. Family is important, but I find in my experience with many families, it's really hard. Kids come home from school, they want to play, they want to have fun, and then now I call myself the homework police. I don't want to be the homework police. I don't want to be the tutoring police. I will say, Amandeep, a problem with tutoring in the US is that sometimes children who need it the most don't have access to it because it costs money. So there are certain companies that do tutoring. You can hire teachers to come to your home to do tutoring. But if you already have a child whose family is just above the poverty line, they might not be able to pay for tutoring. So I think tutoring is important. And I think more important than that, I think children who need access to it should get access to it, which is not always the case.
Right. And Dr. Donna, what we were able to sort of understand is there are students who are just above the poverty line and they need a lot of tutoring, a lot of support. And we thought these federal programs like TRIO and Gear Up and of those sorts sort of help schools and districts in that. Do you think the TRIO is able to do justice in terms of helping and supporting districts in need?
Well, I'm going to tell you this, I've never heard of it. So there you go. If I haven't heard of it as being the CEO of a lead educational entity in New York, I don't know why I haven't heard of it. I do know we have had a lot of money come our way this last year for, it's called ESSER in the US, where we can use that money for enrichment and tutoring. A lot of it, though, the way that we do it is using our own staff, and it's after school. If there was a way where children can engage with it at home or with their families, I think that would make it even more effective.
Wonderful. So, Dr. Donna, I'm just very curious to know if you can throw some light on the biggest academic challenge that you faced as a student, and how did you sort of overcome it?
I hated to read. I love to read now, but I hated to read. And part of the reason I hated to read was I had an eye problem, and I would pick up some words from the top line and some from the bottom, and it wouldn't make any sense. And school didn't help me. School is not what helped me learn how to be a great reader. I went to my grandparents' house one weekend, and they didn't have a television and they didn't have a radio. They had an 8-track, so you know how old my grandparents were. They just passed at 99 and 91 in the last few years. But what they did have was a wall of books. And I picked up the book, I think it's called Lilies of the Field, and it's a very small novel. And I read that book, and it just opened everything for me. I was like, I can read a book for pleasure. I can read a book for pleasure. And that changed it for me. And I am an avid reader. I read books, I read ebooks. I love to read. And sometimes I have multiple books going. But it was really my mom identifying this visual perception problem that I have and taking me to the right doctor, an optometrist, who we did exercises. My mom sat down with me at the table and I covered one eye and did exercises and covered the other. And I was fortunate that my mom was able to do that. She could advocate for me. But there are many families who can't advocate for their children because they don't understand that these types of things happen. I come from a well-educated family. My mother was a teacher, so she knew something was wrong. So a lot of times in education, it's up to the teachers to diagnose what's going on, figure out how to fix it, and to educate the families on what they can do at home as well.
Right. So, but I think the biggest point that you have shared is you used to face challenges reading, and then you sort of went for it. You picked a book and then you start reading it, and then I think that's the gist of it, that don't be afraid of it, just face it, and eventually you'll sort of overcome it. That's a beautiful thought behind it. Wonderful. So Dr. Donna, would you like to share any closing remarks with us?
Sure. Actually, I'd like to offer your readers a free copy of my books. So there are two websites that they can go to. One is getdonnasbook.com, and they will get a download for this one, getdonnasbook.com. And this one, they can get a free download. And this one is joyfulteachers.com. So if they go to either of those websites, they can download free copies of my book, and I would love to hear what they think of them.
Wonderful. I'll start with myself. Yeah, really looking forward to reading that book. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Donna. I again would like to thank you for so graciously accepting our offer and enlightening us with your experience and views. And folks, if you need any tutoring support, hop onto TutorEye.com and we will assign an expert tutor in the first 3 minutes of you being there. That's a promise. Alrighty, stay safe, stay healthy, happy learning, take care, and bye-bye.
Thank you, Amandeep.